Hi, I'm Angela Robbins, and I'm a history professor here at Meredith College. On behalf of students and colleagues in the Department of History, Political Science, and International Studies, the School of Arts and Humanities, and across our campus, welcome and thank you for joining us. 2020 marks the 100th anniversary of the ratification of the 19th Amendment. It was a tremendous milestone in the advancement of women's rights in the United States. In November 1920, millions of American women cast a ballot for the first time. Of course, not every woman was able to exercise her right to vote due to poll taxes, literacy tests, and similar restrictions already in place to prevent African American men from voting. Those restrictions would be applied to African American women and wouldn't be removed until the Voting Rights Act of 1965. Around 36% of eligible women nationwide voted in the presidential election of 1920. This number has risen steadily over the years, with 63% of eligible women voters casting ballots in the 2016 presidential election. Here at Meredith, we had a big celebration of the 19th Amendment planned, the Snapshot 2020 Symposium this past April. With COVID-19, our plans have changed, and some symposium events will now be taking place in spring of 2021. Others will be rescheduled throughout the year, so stay tuned for info about guest speakers and related events through which we will foster interdisciplinary scholarship and conversations focused on the social, economic, and political status of women and girls over these past 100 years. Today, we are highlighting the research of Meredith students and alums. You will be hearing from Morgan Johnson and Marissa Fowler, both history majors from the class of 2020, whose research focused on suffrage activism at Meredith and other women's colleges in North Carolina. Theater majors Laura Austin and Vivian Porch, both from the class of 2021, will talk about the process of creating the devised play titled The Activist. Jenna Curia, a psychology major with the class of 2022, will share highlights on her investigation into gender expectations and identity in religious workplaces. We invite you to enjoy additional projects focused on Meredith College history. You'll find separate links to a PowerPoint presentation created by Janice Sniker in the Meredith Archives, as well as a podcast produced by Morgan Johnson and Marissa Fowler on their suffrage research. Both of these projects use Meredith College archival materials, including yearbooks, newspapers, and literary magazines. The podcast includes dramatic readings by current Meredith students of 100-year-old college publications, bringing those students and their ideas from long ago back to life. Since we can't all gather together, we invite you to view a special recorded performance of the theater production, The Activist. You'll find the link to the play at the end of today's program. Finally, we hope you will honor the women who fought so hard and so long for women's suffrage by exercising your right to vote this November 3rd. Enjoy the program.
Hi, I'm Marissa Fowler.
And I'm Morgan Johnson, and we're both members of the class of 2020. And for the past year or so, we've been doing research on the role of college women in North Carolina in the suffrage movement. And so we're just going to give you a brief overview of what we found in our research, and then we'll refer you to more information about our research.
As we began doing this research, we were primarily focused on suffrage at Meredith College, but we soon realized that there was almost no research that had been done about women college students in North Carolina and their role in the suffrage movement. So we expanded to include many of the major women's colleges at the time, including the State Normal and Industrial School, which is now UNCG, Peace College, which is now William Peace University, and Salem College.
And once we decided on which schools we wanted to focus on, we also had to figure out how we were going to learn about these schools and learn about the suffrage movement there. So we decided on a time frame of about 1910 to 1922 because we felt that would cover the buildup of the movement in the 1910s, and then also any sort of aftermath after women got the right to vote with the 19th Amendment. And so to tackle that time period, we looked at campus publications at these schools. So yearbooks were really helpful. That was probably our best resource. We also looked at literary magazines on these campuses because I think almost all the schools had literary magazines. We also looked at bulletins, which gave updates on the campus as a whole during that time. And Meredith and State Normal actually had some student scrapbooks we were able to look at. And for the most part, these resources are digitized and available online, so they were easily accessible to us.
From all of these primary sources, we were able to understand what form suffrage activism took in the student bodies at these schools. We found so many examples of activism within campuses, most of it just strictly on the campuses, including suffrage marches that spread the support of the movement, as well as debates and mock elections that were held every presidential cycle that allowed students the opportunity to vote. But we also saw a few examples of students who spread outside the walls of the campus, including 3 schools, Meredith, State Normal, and Peace, who all sponsored petitions to their legislators demanding the right to vote.
And so, like we mentioned, this topic was pretty unexplored. Nobody had really looked specifically at women's college students during this time period to see how they felt about suffrage. And I think we determined that it's a pretty worthwhile topic to look into, because college women were involved in the movement heavily, involved in all kinds of ways on campus, and the methods that they used were similar to the methods used by suffragists both in the state, in just North Carolina, and nationally. When you think of the suffrage movement, women wrote and dispersed literature. College women in North Carolina did that. Petitions, marches, college women in North Carolina did all of that. They just kept their scope largely like within the campus borders, and they focused their efforts on strengthening the arguments among their peers and spreading the message among students rather than trying to convince the state as a whole.
For more information about our research, you can refer to the links below. In the spring, we did a CSA Day presentation that specifically focused on Meredith Suffragists. And we also spent a long time working on a full-length podcast that expands upon all of our research from all the schools we studied. For all this information and more, you can go to the Snapshot 2020 website. Thank you.
Hi, my name is Jenna Curia, and I'm a rising junior at Meredith College. I completed a qualitative cross-cultural analysis of gender and identity in religious workspaces. First, I'll tell you a little bit about the background literature relating to my study. Prior research suggests that personal identification is an internal system of control that assigns meanings to oneself in social roles or situations that define what it means to be who one is. Now, people often attempt to modify these meanings based on peer reactions and social consequences. External input and personal identity must be congruent in order for one to maintain a confident sense of self. Now, failure or refusal to correct behavior in order to fit in can lead to an increased stress, decreased sense of belongingness, and a waning commitment and eventual withdrawal from the social group in question. Now, how does this relate to this study? At times, social expectations are gender specific. Women are impacted by gender inequality in their workplaces and their religious environments, which partially compose the dimensions of modern society related to the private sphere. Specifically, religious identity correlates with one's bonds to religious community members. Now, in this study, religious community members are people who you might see at a weekend gathering or a weekday gathering, but also people who you might work with in the workplace. And when one fails to live up to socially implied standards in these social realms, this can lead to distance from the social group when one doesn't feel accepted. Now, changing an identity from one religion or denomination to another, or to disaffiliate from a religion entirely, can be defined as religious preference switching. This decision is often interpreted as an act of defiance and neglect from the social group being left behind. However, research suggests that rather than being rebellion, one's social experiences could be the primary cause of religious preference switching. Next, I'll tell you a little bit more about my need for research. Many studies have examined gender issues, identity formation and maintenance, religious preferences, and social belongingness as independent topics. But when I was conducting my literature review, I found it hard to find literature that related all of these topics to one another. So that's what I set out to do. The relationship between gender-specific social expectations within religious workplaces, women's perceived belongingness in these workspaces, and their influence on personal identification is important because of the complexity of these combined challenges and their ability to isolate women into a minority group. Beginning in the fall of 2018, the present study aimed to enhance the emerging knowledge of gender role expectations with an understanding of their professional, relational, and personal toll on women's social belongingness and identity within religious workspaces. So next I'll tell you a little bit more about my methods. Dataset 1 interviewed 12 Christian Protestant women who had experience in settings affiliated with the religion which they identified, which could have been Presbyterian, Baptist, and non-denominational. Participants were located throughout the southeastern region of the United States. Then, Dataset 2 was conducted the following summer to expand and diversify the initial sample using additional female participants, 7 of whom had participated in Dataset 1. Personal belief systems of these additional 39 participants included Christian Protestant, Brethren, Mormon, Islam, Nazarene, Garifuna, Anglican, Pentecostal, Buddhist, Roman Catholic, Wiccan, and Nun. Participants were located throughout the United States, Haiti, Uganda, Nicaragua, Guatemala, Turkey, and Belize. Next, we'll talk about my procedure. Dataset 1 used face-to-face interviews to ask 5 open-ended questions. Interview sessions were audio recorded in a non-intrusive manner, and other data were collected with written notes. These questions asked things like, tell me about yourself and your background in a religious environment, and how did that make you feel about yourself? Dataset 2 used autobiographical reflection tools to create 6 reflective writing prompts. Following a demographic survey, prompts were translated in English and Spanish and sent to participants via Google Forms. Participants responded with written narratives. Each participant was assigned a participation number to obscure names and any identifying information. Prompts asked things like, tell me the story of yourself and your religious environment. What does that story tell you about yourself as a person and as an employee of a religious workspace? And Tell me about relationships you have in the workplace. Next, I'll tell you about my analysis strategy. Dataset 1 was coded using transcripts from the interview recordings that removed names and other identifying information. Statements that could easily identify the participant were kept confidential. Themes were established by identifying keywords and phrases from all transcriptions, and then connections were made between relevant quotes from all participants. Dataset 2 was coded using 6 written responses per participant. Responses were sorted into number and categories, prompts 1 through 6, and names and other identifying information were removed. Next, the researcher coded each category by color to highlight themes from Dataset 1 that continued to be supported and expanded throughout Dataset 2, as well as new emergent themes found in Dataset 2. Connections were made throughout both the datasets. Next, I'll tell you about my results. Significant power and economic differentials between genders was the first theme that I found throughout both datasets. The interconnection of personal and professional groups made women feel manipulated into undertaking more tasks for lower compensation than their male colleagues. Women admitted feeling the need to work harder due to their gender in order to advance in their field. This led to increased levels of reported stress. The second theme found throughout both datasets was tension between social acceptance and job limitations, just like we were talking about in our literature review. Participants expressed feelings of acceptance in regard to their personal communities, but gender inequality in the workplace put their sense of belonging into question. Women admitted feeling responsible for altering their behavior to fit the standards of their environments. The third theme was guilt that manifests from feelings of never doing enough, which was sustained even while female participants carried heavier workloads than their male colleagues. Attempts to increase job performance to earn fair treatment resulted in feelings of guilt and the shift to identifying oneself as inadequate. The next theme is stronger feelings of love and acceptance in religious as compared to non-religious workspaces. In religious workspaces, female employees reported more pleasurable interactions with colleagues and supervisors of both genders. However, the interconnection of professional and religious social groups also caused participants to feel, quote, forced to stay in their job positions in order to maintain this belongingness. Participants felt higher levels of social acceptance because both groups formed and regulated religious identification. The next theme was recurrent comparisons between characteristics associated with female careers in religious workspaces and characteristics associated with domestically abusive relationships. Participants who had prior experience in religious workspaces but no longer worked there reported a period of denial before withdrawal from the religion and job position in question. During this time, they felt as if they had done something to deserve unfair treatment and struggled to find a solution. Next, participants who were current employees of religious workspaces reported various stages of the same denial described and shared plans to change careers within the year. All women interviewed for the study admitted feeling stuck in their careers due to anxiety about losing their financial, religious, and social support structures. Participants communicated that emotional safety in their religion and workplace is something to be earned, which can potentially damage self and social identity. Finally, the last emergent theme found throughout Dataset 1 and Dataset 2 was hope for change. After a period of denial and false hope while employed by a religious workspace, feelings of defeat and burnout while trying to solve gender equality contributed to the choice to leave the social group, religion, and workplace for 60% of all participants. This caused women to re-examine their personal identities and establish new social support structures elsewhere. Finally, we'll move into the section of discussion. Consistent with background literature, female employees of religious workspaces felt the need to modify meanings with which they identified themselves due to gender-based social consequences in the workspace and religion. Resulting from a social group serving personal, religious, and professional functions, the meanings that participants assigned to themselves based on positive and negative peer reactions changed depending on social contexts. One sense of belonging, within a social group partially depends on the depth of their relationship with the individuals that compose that social group, as we talked about at the beginning of this presentation. Participants felt a higher sense of belonging within their workplaces due to the close correlation between their work environment and supportive religious community, often made up of the same individuals. However, these relational ties were used to manipulate participants into an unfair, undercompensated workload. Participants' bonds to religious communities started to weaken as a result of gender bias in the workplace. These social experiences led to a waning commitment and eventual withdrawal from the workplace and the choice to switch religious preferences, for 60% of all participants. These changes allowed women to form personal, religious, and professional identities and social groups independent from their careers. This led to decreased levels of reported stress and an increased sense of identity and social belongingness, which was really exciting to see. While reflecting on her time as an employee of a religious workplace, one participant said that her outlook was healthier on religion, femininity, and herself by saying, "I didn't used to be, but now I am proud of my ability to think critically in and about a culture which is not always welcoming of fact." Additionally, 3 other participants stated, "Male counterparts of mine tended to have favor of their ideas. There were times when this played into insecurities of my own, not feeling smart enough, creative enough, or good enough." Another said, "While serving in some positions, I have tremendous amounts of stress that impact my weight, sleep patterns, and mood. Physically and emotionally, I feel a difference during the times that I attempt to overcompensate in other areas of work as a result of my gender." Finally, the 3rd participant said, "I felt unsure about whether or not I could be fully in my femininity and not have it hinder my leadership." Thank you for listening to this poster presentation on my qualitative analysis of gender and identity within religious workspaces. If you have any questions, feel free to email me. My email address and contact information is located in the booth. Thank you and have a great day.
Hi, my name is Laura Austin. I am a senior theater major with an English minor, and I am from Garner, North Carolina.
Hi, I'm Vivian Porch. You can call me Viv. I'm also a theater major and a senior, but I have a psychology minor, and I'm from Roanoke Rapids, North Carolina.
So The Activists is the show that we're doing, and it is a devised piece. Basically what a devised piece is where you basically build a show from the ground up, from its bare bones into something that people can see. We had a class where we devised this piece, so we kind of started with an idea, and the idea that we started with was the suffrage movement of the 1920s and women's rights, and then we built off of that. We created a structure and characters, we wrote a script, and we really created this living, breathing piece of art, basically just out of an idea.
The rehearsal process for The Activist, I was not part of the class, but coming together and having everyone bring their ideas from the class and from the script all together made it really inclusive. And it was really fun when people would suggest, why don't we move a character here, or we add another line, or we change this paragraph, this monologue location to the beginning of the show. And even though we've been at it for months, we're still making changes even just recently. So it's always just a very inclusive, constantly changing idea, but with good camaraderie.
So something that I really learned through this process was a little bit of what I already knew and some of what I didn't. Being a woman in this world, obviously we know where there are shortcomings in women's rights, but there are a lot of names that we don't talk about, a lot of really important figures in this movement that I didn't even know the names of, and really pulling those names out and talking about people, and hopefully this show will get people talking about the history of women's rights and women's suffrage instead of just knowing it was this thing that happened a while ago. And like, there's still a lot of work to be done. And then also something that I really learned was how racially divided the women's rights movement was in the 1920s. There were a lot of black women who their voices were not included in the the suffragist movement. So it was very racially divided.
Going off of what she said, as also I've learned, I had a basic knowledge of the suffrage movement, but with this show I learned a lot more. Like, there were characters, actual women's names that were brought up, such as Charlotte Hawkins Brown in North Carolina, that I would have not known otherwise. The women like Susan B. Anthony and Elizabeth Cady Stanton, like in the show, get glorified, but you wouldn't, if someone had randomly asked me, I would not have known who Charlotte was unless in a classroom about the topic. So it was really nice to hear and to learn more about the women that fought, because it wasn't just a small section of leaders, it was such a thoroughly devout group of women from all over the nation that were fighting for the same thing. It was just some women were more brought up racially than others, and which is unfortunately very upsetting.
So something that I hope people take away from this show, as one of the people who helped write it and devise it, I really hope that people see that there's still so much work to be done, and that we cannot stop talking about issues until they are resolved, because just celebrating the small victories is important, but there's always more to be done. And I think that's apparent in this show, and I hope it will be apparent to the people who see it.
And I agree, but what I would take is something from this show of what has changed me. What I have learned is personally how I am able to speak out and be an ally for people of color, women of color, anyone that is not white, that I speak for, but I'm not speaking as their voice. I'm not a spokesperson for someone of color. I'm an ally saying let them speak, hear their voices, and to recognize my privilege and my own position. And this show really helped me recognize that personally.
There's a wave of indignation rolling round and round the land, and its meaning is so mighty and its mission is so grand that none but knaves and cowards dare deny its just demand as we go marching on.
Hello, my name is Kathy Rogers, and I'm the director of the performance that you are about to see. The Activist is a devised work written by 12 Meredith students under the guidance of theater adjunct professor and alum Meredith Jones. Last spring, they researched the women's suffrage movement as well as the 19th Amendment to the U.S. Constitution and the Equal Rights Amendment. The result is the play that you will see tonight, featuring 5 Meredith student actors. Now, as you can imagine, theater during a global pandemic looks a little bit different. So as a result, our actors will be masked and socially distancing, and we're staging it outside in the Science and Math Building courtyard rather than in one of our theaters. Plus, we're videotaping it so that more people have access to it. Our hope is that you will enjoy it despite the differences, and that you will want to explore more for yourself the women's suffrage movement, as well as be inspired by these great, brave women who came before us. Thank you.
I first became aware of the Equal Rights Amendment as a Meredith College student in the mid-1970s in Dr. Sarah Lemon's history class. head of the history department, Dr. Lemon was a formidable professor, smart, organized, articulate, but also kind and caring. She encouraged us to take part in a march to support the Equal Rights Amendment. We did. Oh, it was exciting. We marched out of Meredith with our signs and our badges all the way downtown to the North Carolina legislature, a place where some 40 years earlier my own grandfather had been a legislator. Little did we suspect, however, that the opposition was already there and winning. Phyllis Schlafly's anti-ERA group had been busy baking bread and distributing it to every legislator in both the House and Senate. Miss Schlafly was an American constitutional lawyer and vocal movement conservative who opposed both feminism and abortion. On each loaf of bread, there was a note that read, "From the bread bakers to the bread winners, defeat the ERA." We quickly went from feeling empowered to feeling discouraged, but we persevered. We spoke to as many legislators as possible, giving them our short speech about why the amendment was so important to us and to future generations of young women. Our main talking point was the assurance of equal pay for equal work. We pressed them about how the opposition's social arguments concerning pregnant women being forced to fight on the front lines or women abandoning their children was so absurd. Some nodded agreement, some scowled, some rushed past us to avoid any confrontation. We tried, but the North Carolina House defeated the bill to ratify the ERA on April 16, 1975. It would not be the last time the bill was introduced, nor the last time it would be defeated. Despite our best efforts, and the efforts of courageous women like Gladys Avery Tillett, who organized the first League of Women Voters County chapter in North Carolina in 1921, the ERA was not passed. So much for first in freedom.
We keep searching for ideas, but nothing is catching on.
We only have a week left before we have to find a concept and present to the class. I liked a lot of the things mentioned.
Yeah, I guess I like it too.
Wait, I've got it.
What?
What if we try to include the audience in some way?
Really?
I think we should be careful how we decide to include the audience.
Well, what do you mean by that?
Well, we don't want people to think that Meredith is like this place that hates men. Like, we have a sign on our door that says, "No men allowed."
It's not about that, though. It's centering around people who traditionally aren't given a platform. It's bringing to light people's privilege.
What if we make people feel uncomfortable?
I don't think we should limit what we have to say to make someone comfortable.
This isn't about comfort. This is about inspiring action.
She's right. We shouldn't have to be careful with our activism.
All I'm trying to say is people might not get what we're trying to say.
She has a point. They might get angry or hurt and not listen.
We have to make sure we have the impact we want.
We don't want to make anybody angry to the point where they won't listen. And also we're going to change their minds or influence them.
Then the show will be a waste of time. It won't matter how great the show is. We have to be careful. We can't be too preachy.
I still don't think you should care this much about what the audience will think.
Look at this. Instead of writing the play, we're more worried about how people will react.
Let's put a pin in that idea for now. What else are you guys thinking?
Well, I've been thinking about how this is a primarily white ensemble. We need to think about the kinds of stories we can tell with the group we have.
Yes, but we also want to make sure we don't center around white perspectives and feelings.
We still need to mention racism, the intersection of race and gender, and the role that it played in the suffragist movement.
We do not want to continue the whitewashing of history.
Elizabeth Cady Stanton and Susan B. Anthony get glorified all the time, and the textbooks hardly mention that they did not fight for all women. Meanwhile, black suffragists don't nearly get as much recognition.
1920 wasn't a day of universal suffrage. Many women had to wait until the Voting Rights Act of 1965 because of voter suppression based on race.
Okay, let's just see what we have.
Alright, here's what we've got. I am in search
Of truth and no obstacle shall prevent my prosecuting that search. It is impossible that we should answer the purpose of our being unless we understand that purpose. It is impossible that we should fulfill our duties unless we comprehend them, or live up to our privileges unless we know what they are. I rejoice that they have called the attention of my sex to this subject, because I believe if woman investigates it, she will soon discover that danger is impending, though from a totally different source from that which the association apprehends. Danger from those who, having long held the reins of usurped authority, are now unwilling to permit us to fill that sphere which God created us to move in, and who have entered into league to crush the immortal mind of woman. I rejoice, because I am persuaded that the rights of women, like the rights of slaves, need only be examined to be understood and asserted, even by some of those who are now endeavoring to smother the irrepressible desire for mental and spiritual freedom, which grows in the breasts of many who hardly dare to speak their sentiments.
Hear the tramp of their feet as they come down the street. Gee, those girlies look sweet, they're all dressed up so neat. Your dear old ma just took a fire's place. She likes the smell of powder 'cause it's always on her face. There's no rats in her hair, you can see she don't care. Holds her head in the air, gee, your mother's a bear. Tramp, 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 the girls are marching. Your mother's on her way to join the army.
When the sun rose up on the world, there was a man.
He's been here from the beginning.
Whatever creation you believe in, whatever mantra you embrace, at the root,
At the core,
At the head,
there is a man.
Now let us be clear.
to all the men in our lives,
The fathers and grandfathers who reared and cherished us.
the brothers who protected us,
the boyfriends and husbands who loved us.
Let us be clear.
This anger is not towards you.
this anger should excite you.
It should enrage you.
You should share it with us.
Please.
Because fighting a war without allies or friends
Or lovers,
It isn't human.
It isn't fair.
it doesn't get us
Anywhere.
This is a war, and they hate us for it.
Society hates us.
Men can't stand it.
Some of us hate ourselves.
This is a war.
A woman. What does that word mean to you? What makes a woman in your eyes? The dictionary defines a woman as an adult female person. That's it. That's all we have to describe us. Men, on the other hand, are described as a human individual representing the species, the human race, humankind. You hear that difference?
For suffrage from ocean to ocean. For suffrage from mountain to shore. Fair women are all in commotion, and men leaguers with them galore. One wolf, a strong pull, bringing the ballad so near. Another pull, together pull, and bring it to pass in the year. Last night as we listened and waited, a message came over the sea. It wished us good luck and it stated, our sisters in China are free. One pull, a strong pull, bringing the ballad so near. Another pull, together pull, and bring it to pass in the year.
Did you hear the noise outside?
Yes, they seem to be at it again.
They've been at it all morning. How was your trip?
It was astonishing. The 1911 National Union of Women's Suffrage Societies in England was so amazing and so inspiring. I really think we can start making a bigger change here.
We have pushed for women's suffrage laws to be passed in Virginia, but we have not yet made any progress.
Yes, it doesn't seem like this push is getting us anywhere.
Exactly. So we need to push for something bigger. For example, an amendment to the U.S. Constitution granting us equal rights under the law. We need to start thinking of the country as a whole. The electorate will be stronger with our voices, they just don't know it yet. If Virginia won't adopt this amendment, then we have to go above that.
I agree, this needs to spread further. We've tried to go state by state, but it doesn't seem like this push is getting us anywhere.
All right, what can we do?
We need to educate people, especially women, that the government will be much stronger once we're represented.
How? Just by talking to people?
Yes, basically.
How will we accomplish this just by talking to people?
I'm going to travel and spread the word wherever I can, in South Carolina, in Virginia, anywhere I am able.
Perhaps we can help organize those people to join our cause.
That's a brilliant idea. Then we can work for the cause there as well as in other states.
But remember, ladies, patience is of the utmost importance. Other activists are losing patience, but by doing that, we will lose our entire fight. With violence and impatience, no one will listen. We owe it to ourselves and to those we are fighting for to wait and fight in a proper way so that we can achieve our goal.
100 years. 100 years ago, Lila, Addie, and Alice had that conversation. And women are still fighting.
What's the excuse now? Still afraid that if women wear pants, we'll just up and take men's jobs?
Virginia just ratified the Equal Rights Amendment to the U.S. Constitution in January of 2020, becoming the 38th state to do so. If only it were true, as Susan B. Anthony once said, that failure is impossible.
Every day, I can't help but think what this world would be like if men and women were
Truly equal. I'm confused.
It seems
So basic and so essential to basic human equality.
Progression is slow.
Too slow.
The goal is to
Not need to march for our rights.
There are
Traces of misogyny.
in so many mundane things, and even in the power to change
The Constitution. It's 2020 and we're still fighting.
For this amendment that basically ensures protection from discrimination.
That's really shameful.
Reviewing your resume and academic credentials, I can see you're a superb student and an excellent candidate for Oberlin.
Thank you for this opportunity, Mr. Mahan. I won't disappoint you.
Now hold on a minute, young lady. I didn't say you were in just yet.
Oh, I'm sorry if I came off as presumptuous. I just thought.
Yes, you're a superb student and an excellent candidate for this institution, as I said before, Miss Stone, but that's not where the issue lies. The issue lies in the miss. You would be accepted immediately if you were Mr. Stone. Your womanhood presents the admissions board with a hard decision to make.
I apologize, Mr. Mahan, if this comes across as rude, but it must be said. If you are able to see that my credentials speak for me, and that my contribution to this school will be greatly beneficial, then why does my sex matter in the slightest? Yes, I am a woman, and I am extremely proud to be one. There is no reason why womanhood and intellect cannot coexist.
Yes, I understand all of this. It's clear that your mind works a little beyond that of the average woman, but...
How do you measure the intellect of the average woman?
I beg your pardon?
I inquired about how you measure the intellect of the average woman. You've never offered a woman admission into this institution before, and neither is any other school in the state of Ohio. You have no way to assess the level of intelligence of the average woman if you never give the average woman a chance. You're making assumptions based on what society tells you to believe, and that's not fair to anyone.
This is highly unprofessional, Miss Stone. You cannot behave this way in an interview. I'm your college president and you'll speak to me with respect.
Yes, sir, but... I'm sorry, did you say my college president?
Indeed I did. You make a compelling case for yourself as well as other women, but I am, of course, concerned for the reputation of our institution, so know that you are on thin ice. Your grades and your behavior must be top-notch, and I reserve the right to revoke your admission at any point, at any time, for any reason. Is this understood, Miss Jones?
Thank you, Mr. Mahan. I promise there will be no cause to even think about revoking my admission. I'll work harder than any student you've ever had. I don't plan on letting you or myself down.
One moment, miss.
Yes, Mr. Mahan?
You have the power to change the world with the opportunity that I have just given you. Do not throw it away.
You've seen my resume, Mr. Mahan. You should know that I never back down from a challenge. Women are more than caregivers and housewives. We are smart and strong. A time of equality is coming where we will have equal status with men.
And now, a commercial message from a parallel universe.
I don't know, ladies. Having a man onto the team seems too risky.
It's not about gender. The fact of the matter is we don't have enough room for another member. Well, Melissa was interested too. Well, Melissa, that's different. She has different skills. Joshua, he just... You know what I mean.
Yeah, no doubt. I think we have to make a call here. And letting a man onto the team, they'd suddenly want longer bathroom breaks for, you know.
Oh, hell no. I will not deal with that. And you know, they always want to talk about sports. There's just no way for them to get what we're doing here. I mean, we run a business. We have to keep it on track. Exactly. Plus, we have to change up their refreshments. Men are picky. Have to get them, like, beer or... What do you men drink?
Cologne?
Maybe. Speaking of drinks, another round?
Yes, please. Speaking of that, maybe we could hire Joshua. You know, as an assistant. He smells good. Didn't you notice?
I was too busy looking at his package. I mean, that gray suit, he was not hiding anything. You know, I hate to say it, but I'll be the one. Men are just better at that kind of work anyway. You know, like answering the phones and taking notes and stuff. It just fits better with their skills.
You make a valid point. And getting to see that tight ass every day? You know, he used to work with the volunteer firefighters. Maybe we can make a dress code for him. Tank tops and sweatpants only.
I think we could make it work. But let's give Melissa a call tomorrow, add her to the team. She seems like a better fit.
Agreed. And letting a man onto the team this late, he'd just be confused. I mean, I respect men. They're just slower. It's nature.
Oh shit, forget about that. Hottie at the bar at 5 o'clock.
Ooh, oh hey baby, turn around for me. Come home with me and I'll make it worth your while.
Home is a tricky concept. They say a woman's place is in the home, but was a woman not your first home? Women are the homes that allow all of us to exist. They say the United States is our home, but it's not. It's theirs. A home is a place of comfort, a place to blossom. Women are trampled on the ground as if we are the dirt and men are the seeds. But we are the plants. We are the flowers that will overtake this house.
There's a wave of indignation rolling round and round the land, and its meaning is so mighty and its mission is so grand that none but amazing powers dare deny its just demand as we go marching on.
Ladies, I propose an amendment. An official amendment to the Constitution.
I would not do so yet. I still don't have voting rights, much less equal rights under the law.
I understand that it will be a difficult process, but I cannot help but feel hope and pride.
Some would say this legislation is unnecessary, that we shouldn't tamper with the Constitution. Of course, this argument bewilders me to no end.
Dr. Paul, we acknowledge that this is the legacy of your life's work, of all of our life's work. Is this why you've gathered us?
We are on the precipice of another great moment for our country.
Perhaps. But lest we forget, justice moves mighty slow when it concerns our rights. That is the way of the world. I share Dr. Paul's optimism. What a legacy it would be. Section 1. Equality of rights under the law shall not be denied or abridged by the United States or any state on account of sex. Section 2. The Congress shall have the power to enforce by appropriate legislation the provisions of this article. Section 3. This amendment shall take effect 2 years after the date of ratification.
This is only the beginning of a long, arduous fight. A year after Congress passed the 19th Amendment, it was finally ratified. A full year. This fight has just begun.
Ladies, this movement is a clarion call to the women of today. It bids her stand up and think for herself. We can speak for ourselves, think for ourselves, live for ourselves. This world, and most importantly the South of this country, is in need of change. We as women are judged for everything we do. We don't have children, and it's a disgrace. We have them, and we're blamed for raising them wrong. But we have girls, and they're disrespected like you and me. My fellow suffragist and educator Charlotte Hawkins Brown in North Carolina has a good approach for the fight for women's suffrage. She affirms that this is an opportunity for social and economic mobility within our communities, that this isn't necessarily a white issue or a black issue, it's a women's issue. We both want our communities to be viable and for our children to be healthy. Have you seen the hospital that I have to go to? It's nothing like the White Hospital, not at all. It would shock you to see how much worse it is to have to be separated from good care because of a darker skin color. No, you'll never know. Because opportunity was on your side and it was never on mine. We should work together to make this a women's issue. We have black women show up to register to vote in the southern states, like my native Virginia, but there are white male registrars there not knowing what to do. So they told women to go back, come back the next day. It was upon returning the women found out they had to pay a poll tax, or else the men would invent some kind of new rule to keep them from voting. The idea, of course, was to keep us disenfranchised. And they unfortunately succeeded. I am sorry, but will Dr. Paul's amendment truly mean all women? I don't know, but that is my hope.
She's good enough to be your baby's mother,
And she's good enough to vote with you.
she's good enough to love you and adore you. She's good enough to bear your troubles for you. And if your tears were falling today, nobody else would whisk them away. She's good enough to warm your heart with kisses when you are lonesome and blue. She's good enough to be your baby's mother, and she's good enough to vote with you.
Darling, what's this important news? What are you so worked up about?
Randall asked me to marry him, Mother.
I hope you told him no.
Well, I told him I'd think about it.
Alice, you're far too young.
I am not a child, Mother.
No, you're not. And you just got accepted into graduate school in England. Are you seriously considering squandering away this opportunity?
It's not like it was when you were in school, Mother. And Randy and I have talked about it. He's willing to wait a year or two and then he'll join me.
You'll end up penniless or pregnant or worse.
I'll end up like you mean?
Alice, I don't have the potential that you have. You have this way of talking to people, of making them listen to you. You can do so much good in this world. I won't stand idly by while you throw all caution to the wind. If you choose to marry this man, then you're on your own.
Mother.
If you choose to do this,
then you'll figure out your college tuition on your own also.
Stop pretending like this is about me and my potential when it is so clearly about your own regrets.
Mind yourself, Alice.
Wanting a husband is not at the cause, Mother, nor does wanting a family.
But we do not live in a world where we get to have both. Maybe one day we can be seen as equals and afford the luxuries of domesticity, but currently we are too busy proving that we can be more. You have always been so ahead of your time, Alice. Too ahead for your own good.
I want to marry him, Mama.
I know you do. I wish you could. But women seldom ever get to have what we want until we claw for it.
Isn't simply getting to have what we want worth clawing for? Why do we have to ask so politely, please and thank you? It's foolish, Mother, to think we're going to get what we want by playing nice. We've always played nice, always, and why? Because we felt like because we're women, we had to. And look where it's gotten us. All of nowhere. It's time to be angry. We deserve to be angry. We deserve to riot and to break things. Forget, please and thank you, I'm taking it.
Don't say another word to me about my obligations as a woman. I am not obligated to give up any part of me for anybody, much less for a man. Yes, I love Henry, but his last name is just that, his. I'm not keeping my name because I don't respect him or I don't love him enough. I simply refuse to let myself constantly wear a badge that says I no longer belong to myself, that I now belong to Henry. Mother, why did you take Dad's name? Because it was tradition? Well, tradition isn't enough for me. All they do is trap women where they need men's permission to escape. And I refuse to voluntarily place myself into captivity.
We interrupt this troubling message of feminism for a brief advertisement from the patriarchy.
Do you want to be a proper, well-behaved woman? Tired of that urge to speak your mind, ask questions in public, and have bodily autonomy? Well, you are in luck. Our new product, Mind Away, is the perfect solution for you. Just one sip of this absolutely FDA-approved formula, and you will be simpering and dead-eyed in no time, just the way you vowed to be on your wedding day. Isn't that amazing? Here's how it works. Just scoop 1 teaspoon of the powder into a glass of milk. The milk must be room temperature. Next, leave the room for 30 minutes. The fumes created by the chemical mixing process can be fatal, so be sure to lock up your cats and babies and avoid touching your eyes without washing your hands for at least 3 days. Once you've waited the recommended amount of time, all you have to do is drink the whole glass in one go. Be careful, ladies. Make sure your husbands aren't home. Chugging is very disgusting, and you will not look very pretty. Once our formula kicks in, all those pesky thoughts of civil rights and independence will just slip away right out the kitchen window. You may notice that you have an increased desire to bake, and you won't even think twice about taking your husband's shoes off when he collapses after a long day at the office. You may also notice that your vocabulary greatly decreases. Do not worry, ladies. With your new servile and domestic attitude, you won't need to speak your opinions. And who wants them anyway? To get a free trial of Mind Away, just call your local courthouse and ask to speak with any certified notary. Then hang up the phone and cut your telephone wires just to be safe. A waste management official will deliver your first dose of Mind Away within this very normal process about 1 week. You may notice the biohazard packaging, but don't be alarmed. It's strictly precautionary. Ladies, Your days of restlessness and dissatisfaction in the bedroom are over. Call now.
We are women. We should be working for each other, not against. They say we should take it one step at a time. This is the one step. Voting rights for all women. All women. You think they'll only listen to us if we make a case for white women alone. We'll just worry about women of color later, right? Why not now? Our voices deserve to be heard, and our voices are just as important as yours. Despite what we prolonged, if we worry about some women now and others later. We need to show those lawmakers a united force so they can see just how strong we are together. You know, if we let them give rights to only white men now, your fight for equality will go on, where we're left behind, fighting for those same rights. We can show them just how strong we are, as long as we believe that no women are free unless all women are free. We can do it, together.
There's a wave of indignation rolling round and round the land, and its meaning is so mighty and its mission is so grand that none but knaves and cowards dare deny its just demand as we go marching on.
Society hates us.
The government hates us.
Some of us hate ourselves.
Why is progress so hard?
I wonder what it will take to live in a world of equality.
True equality.
Don't we deserve
a chance?
I would like to know what's keeping the ERA out of the Constitution, or is keeping some states from ratifying it. It's 2020,
and we're still fighting for our basic rights.
I want to know why so many people are scared of it.
Well, I know. It's because of misogyny.
Are you really that privileged?
That careless?
No compassion.
Full of self-loathing.
So poisoned by these things that you can support people who view women as objects.
And they aren't bothered by that.
There is still much work to be done.
The measure to extend the deadline has passed the House, but we fear it may stay there. The Senate Majority Leader has no intentions of scheduling a vote.
Once again, a man stands in the way.
And the earth spins on, and we wait.
Sometimes patiently, sometimes not.
With any hope, Dr. Paul's amendment will be passed sooner rather than later.
There has been a wall built between us and what we want to achieve. They say it is our responsibility to tear down the wall if we want what they have. But what we don't talk about is, on their side of the wall, the men have all the tools that would make it possible for us to tear it down. The sledgehammers, the crowbars, they are all on the other side of the wall. So women are left with nothing but their voices to speak out against this injustice. The only problem is, when you shout at a wall, it doesn't answer you.
But it will eat you alive.
You live and you die.
Without asking why.
Why do you hate?
Why make me wait?
Is hemlock my fate?
Poisoned by fear.
Indifference, false tears?
Carefree and bound.
Privileged, enslaved.
Then dropped in the ground.
Stepped over, around.
Hustled and ground.
Like meat on the table, it eats you alive.
Let's stop screaming at walls.
Let's break down the walls.
Let's break down the whole damn system.
When people tell you to take
one step at a time,
they're usually telling you
stop and slow down. It's never encouraging. You're terrified that a woman could do better than you, and that means that you'd have to work harder.
I have never been one to wait for things to happen.
I take action.
No man in this world can ever stop me from rising up.
Just you watch.
You don't have to listen to what these men tell you.
You are just as good as they are, but being capable has
nothing to do with gender. It's believing you can do it and having the strength to do it. You can do it.
Here's to believing in the future.
A future where we can all be free.
And if you're not going to do something, then I will.
And you can't stop me.
This past January, the great state of Virginia became the 38th state to pass the ERA, thus giving it the majority needed to ratify the amendment to the U.S. Constitution. Does that make it a done deal? Of course not. The amendment's original deadline for ratification expired in the 1980s, leaving its future on uncertain legal ground. But that didn't stop me from welcoming a long-awaited day. I hope to celebrate again soon, when 40 years after that march down Hillsborough Street, I see it finally become a reality.
For suffrage from ocean to ocean, for suffrage from mountain to shore, fair women are all in commotion, and men leaguers with them galore. One pull, a strong pull, bringing the ballot so near, another pull, together pull, and bring it to pass in the year. Last night as we listened and waited, a message came over the sea. It wished us good luck and it stated, our sisters in China are free. One pull, a strong pull, bringing the ballot so near, another pull, together pull, and bring it to pass in the year.